Before we dive into tonight's story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell button like you're ringing for room service at a 5-star hotel. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we've got cooking. Story 1. Hot Treats. I worked on a ship, and between the 4 of us that worked on the bridge, we each took turns buying sweets, biscuits, cake, and nice coffee for everyone. Everyone, that is, except the captain. He never contributed, but always took the most. Despite making much more money than us, he was incredibly cheap and greedy, and it annoyed everyone to no end. Fed up with his antics, I decided to hatch a plan. I ordered some ghost chili fudge and some Wethdish coffee online. For those unfamiliar, the coffee is advertised as the strongest on the market, with a typical cup containing about 165 milligrams of caffeine. I arrived on board as usual at 5:30 to start the day. I made a pot of the strong coffee, extra strong, and opened the ghost fudge, cutting it up and putting it out on a plate. I made sure to dispose of the packaging so there'd be no clues. The boss arrived as I was doing the morning startup routines. Before even saying good morning, he poured himself a large mug of coffee and shoved 2 large pieces of fudge into his mouth. I waited a second or two, pretending I had just noticed him, and then said, "Don't eat the fudge. It's a joke to play on the others." It was too late. He was already on fire and had swallowed it. To try and quench the flames, he poured the entire mug of coffee down his throat. He was sweating, more like melting, and mumbled something about needing to go down to his cabin for something. Shortly after, the chief mate came up, almost in tears from laughing, and said the captain had asked him to cover for him. He knew exactly what I had done and was fully behind it. We didn't see the captain again until mid-afternoon. When he finally reappeared, he complained that he'd been on the toilet all morning, and when he tried to lie down to sleep it off with a nap, all he could do was stare at the deckhead, ceiling, wide awake. After that incident, he never tried to finish off sweets that were lying around again. Story 2. Don't shower for too long. When I was 17, my boyfriend and I moved in for a bit with his mother, Meryl. It was not a pleasant time, and I have many stories. Some are intense, like 911 on Christmas, but this one makes me smile every time I think about it. Meryl's house had rules, and God's help you if you didn't follow those rules. One rule was that showers could be no more than 10 minutes in length. Meryl would time you every time, and she'd turn off the hot water at 10 minutes. I'm good at fast showers, so only got iced once or twice in the time I lived there, but she did that to everyone. The knob to turn off the hot water was right next to the back door, which opened into the backyard. The backyard had a lovely fire pit that was used by Meryl's extended family, who visited often. Meryl was mean to everyone. Meryl was not good at timing her showers. So, one evening, a bunch of cousins near my age were sitting around the fire pit with us who lived there, and Meryl said she was going inside for a shower. I waited until I figured she'd be in the bathroom, got up without a word, and wandered inside. I heard the shower turn on, and I waited by the back door with a timer. At exactly 10 minutes, I turned the hot water off and booked it back into the yard, sitting down in the same empty seat I left from, and said to everyone, "I was here the whole time." Everyone had already heard the shriek by then, which was followed by Meryl storming outside wrapped in a towel. She was pointing at me as she speed-walked up, yelling things like, "I know it was you, you little bah," and so on. I put on my best bewildered face and asked what she meant. She screamed that someone turned off the hot water and she knew it was me. Everyone assured her that I'd been outside with them the whole time and nobody had left the fire pit. As far as I know, nobody ever told her it was me. I hope they didn't, because she already hated my guts and it drove her wild that she could never catch me at anything. There wasn't much to catch me at, but I did manage to get a couple of good ones in while living there. Story 3. Your lawyer's letter will make things worse. I own a small engineering company providing electrical engineering services. I had a series of small projects with a large delivery company that seemed to like the color brown. These projects each had a small need for some mechanical engineering to design some heating, so I hired a small local mechanical engineering company to do that work. We had completed one job a full year earlier, and I had 2 more projects that he had completed, and we were just waiting for Brown to deliver the final payment. The engineer started looking at his books and realized that there was some time from the job that had been done for a year that he had never invoiced me for. He calls me about it, and I tell him that there is no way to capture that money this far removed. When large companies do projects, they create budgets for the projects, and once that project is closed, the money source is gone. He insists that they should pay, and I explain why they would not. About a month later, I got a demand letter from his lawyer, demanding that year-old money plus immediate payment on the 2 current invoices. A demand letter is simply a demand written by a lawyer, so it has no real power except the intimidation factor of being written by a lawyer. So I ignore the demand letter. About that time, I had received the money from Brown. I told him that I have a new policy that requires a lien release before final payment will be issued. Lien releases don't have much power over engineering services, they are for contractors, but this strings him along. After a couple of weeks, I sent him a lien release that required him to notarize it. My requiring a notary on a powerless document was just another way to mess with him. About a month later, I did the same thing with the other final invoice. So in the end, this dude didn't get his year-old invoice paid, but did have to pay for his lawyer to write a letter, then wait for payment, and waste time getting a couple of notary signatures. Story 4. Treated unfairly by the teacher all semester, but I gave him some payback. This story goes back over 30 years ago when I, M50, was a senior in high school. Civics was a required course necessary for graduation. My older sister had taken civics 4 years earlier with the same teacher, Mr. K. On my first day in class, Mr. K took attendance, recognized my last name, and asked if I was related to my sister. Upon acknowledging that we were related, Mr. K shakes his head and in his West African accent says, "Bad citizen, I will have to watch you." Bad citizen was his catchphrase for anyone who did something he didn't like in his classroom. I thought he was just kidding me, but I soon learned that he was serious. Now, I don't know what kind of trail of destruction my older sister had left in her wake, but I wasn't a troublemaker. I get into class on day 2 of civics, and 10 minutes into class, I start getting chastised by Mr. K for talking during class. What was particularly odd, beyond the fact that I hadn't spoken a word, was that no one was talking. I tried to explain that I hadn't said anything, but it didn't matter. Not 5 minutes later, I was getting sent to the office with a suspension referral for talking in class without speaking. Apparently, Mr. K's credibility was already somewhat tarnished with the school administrators, and I wasn't suspended from school. Nonetheless, this is how much of the semester went. I would get sent to the office for Mr. K's paranoid delusions. He would mark my tests with grades of C or D even though I had answered every question correctly. Gave me a final grade of C even though I had earned an A. Mr. K always stayed after school each day until exactly 5 p.m. in his classroom with the door closed. No one knows what he did in there, as he never had a lesson plan that went beyond having students read the textbook out loud to the rest of the class. So on the last day of school, everyone left right away for the summer. Everyone that is, except for Mr. K and myself. Mr. K was secluded in his classroom as he always was after school was done. I tiptoed silently up to his door, standing with my feet wider than the door to prevent the shadow of my feet from being seen under the door. I then proceeded to empty an entire tube of glue, the fast-drying kind, into the seam between his door and the door frame. Well, Mr. K and the glue had a little over 2 hours for the glue to set. Plenty of time for the glue to harden. I wasn't around for it, but I heard that the fire department had to come to free him from his classroom. Mr. K could only guess who the bad citizen was that glued him in his room.